This is State Board of Professional Counselors and Therapists, Behavior Analysts, Licensure applications. And
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you to my wonderful friends on HGO. For the record, I am Delegate Michelle Guyton, Baltimore County District 42B, and I bring to you for consideration today House Bill 745, which simply helps improve access to what's considered the most effective therapy for kids with autism. So one of the most beneficial therapies that we know of for children with autism is called applied behavioral analysis. If you want to know more about that offline, I'll be happy to give you a tutorial, but in the interest of time, you'll have to trust me on that it's a thing and that it works. Right? There are many families who remain on the waiting list for these services because they're not available to them. Right? And there's something that we can do about that, because the turnaround time for licensing here in the state of Maryland is extremely long compared to the states around us. And that is what this bill is trying to fix. The sooner licenses can be approved, the sooner that children with autism can begin treatment, and you all on HGO know early intervention is key to the best outcomes. So House Bill 745 establishes a timeline for the issuance of a license to practice ABA, to a qualified applicant. And this bill requires that the State Board of Professional Counselors and Therapists issue a license within 10 days of receiving all of the completed application. And it requires the State Board to provide email notification regarding the status of that application for the license. So I respectfully request a favorable report on a really simple bill with no cost that really could increase access to needed therapies for our kids. Thank you.
thank you, Delegate. Who would like to go next?
Madam Chair, I will go next. My name is Dan Shattuck. I'm here today on behalf of ACORN, a provider of ABA services here in the state of Maryland. I think the delegate did a great job introducing the bill and what we're trying to achieve. The turnaround time for licensure is abnormally long. There is a tremendous wait for these services, and what we're trying to get is really two things with this bill: a set time frame under which the board has to operate, but also some transparency and the ability for the applicant to reach out and inquire where their application is in the status. The application process now is paper-based, and we're not asking to change that, but as we look at how fast things are being processed, I think giving a deadline is going to be essential, and allowing the applicant to inquire or have a designated third party be able to inquire if it's a credentialing office or something like that. So we think it's a straightforward bill. We appreciate your consideration, and we have some experts here to tell you a little bit more. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Carrie Victorio, and I am a BCBA currently working as a clinical director at Acorn Health, managing our Germantown and Silver Spring locations. I've been in the field of ABA since 2011, and I've been a BCBA since 2018. I most recently was licensed as a behavior analyst in the state of Maryland in December 2023 when I relocated from Southern California. At that time, I knew my employment was going to be contingent on state licensure, so I sought that in both Maryland and Virginia. While Virginia processed my application within 10 days, Maryland took nearly 6 weeks to do the same, which, as you might imagine, was incredibly stressful when I'm trying to accept jobs in another state and figure out my relocation timeline. These cumbersome wait times not only impact people coming in from out of state that are seeking licensure, but they impact new clinicians who have just passed their exam and are fully approved by our board to practice, but cannot begin to credential with insurance companies until they receive that licensure. So cannot start helping children with that credential until they are licensed. Most recently, one of our new BCBAs at Acorn waited 75 days for her licensure to be processed. So that was months and months of time before she could be client-facing and help the clients that we serve. Becoming a BCBA requires a massive commitment of time, education, and money from our practitioners. And so retaining them is challenging in an already understaffed field when they pass their exam. These licensing delays add to that challenge and not only prolong the time before they can take on a caseload, but prolong the time before they can help clients. Applied behavior analysis is a medically necessary service that provides greater freedom and independence to our clients on the autism spectrum by teaching skills across the developmental domains of socialization, communication, and adaptive skills. And we also work on reducing harmful and dangerous behaviors that are limiting to these clients across different community settings. It's crucial that we get children recommended for these services into care as early and efficiently as possible to maximize progress and impact. Every second truly does count. We have nearly 1,000 children on our wait list in Maryland. So this is something that we can do right now by shortening licensing times to help those kids get access to care. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Who's next, please?
Madam Chair, Barbara Brocato here in support of, and I have to look, House Bill 745, and on behalf of ACORN, and I want to say me too.
Thank you. And by the way, the committee loves it when you say me too, okay? After it's been stated like 5-10 times. Thank you. Next, please. Is that you? Yeah, Andrea Mansfield? Will you please come up? Okay, it says just favorable, not support with amendment, but go ahead and have a seat. Go ahead.
Okay. Do I come back?
No, hold on. Just come back. You know what, Andrea? We have you here as favorable and part of the panel, so I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter. We'll get to you, okay? So everyone there testify already. We're going to open it up for questions. Are there questions? Delegate Kaiser?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate Guyton. I have a two-part question, or I guess maybe an easy question and then maybe slightly harder. You said we were worse than other states, and you used Virginia, but do you have the data? What's the overall average? And if that's not something you can have now, could you get back to us?
I don't have that right here in front of me, but there are states that don't require licensure at all. For instance, California does not require state licensure. So I was practicing there with my board certification, which was issued to me by the BACB, without licensure. So it's not necessary to practice in all states.
Okay, I was just trying to get the licensure numbers. And then my second thing is, I don't think anyone testified in opposition, but there's a letter of information, which is essentially a letter of opposition from the Department of Health. Did you speak with them? They say they would be fine with 30 days. I mean, I guess I want to understand from you and them, you can only talk for you, about that, like going from this to this might be too hard for them practically, but maybe this is the first step and then we get them to 30 days and then in a few years you go to 15 days or something. So have you spoken with them?
Thank you for your question, Delegate Kaiser. There are two more witnesses favorable virtually that are going to, it's my understanding, they're going to address those two issues. Is that correct? The wait time.
Actually, hold on one second. Can you bring those two witnesses up, please? I believe they're April Bailey and Scott.
We only need one of them to do that.
Scott Semmel. Good afternoon, Ms. Bailey. Will you be so kind if you could hear me and unmute you can go ahead and start your testimony.
Hi, good afternoon. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me on House Bill 745. My name is April Bailey. I am a part of the payer team with ACORN Health. So the delay in processing licensure for healthcare providers, especially for those offering applied behavior analysis, we know that it's a significant barrier to accessing timely and effective care for patients with autism. For individuals with autism, science has proven that early intervention is crucial. So the sooner a child needs ABA therapy, the better their chances are for improved, social communication and adaptive skills. However, whenever the licensure delays occur, which happens every time somebody submits an application for licensure, the therapists who are already qualified are not able to provide that therapy at that critical early stages of development. And it sometimes can make the waitlist longer for our families or force them to seek services outside of their preferred provider, even when we have spots available to take those individuals. ABA is essential for child's progress and independence. We already know this. And so if the therapists are waiting months to get the proper licensure, it can often mean that the difference between timely intervention and a loss of like opportunity growth for that child. So ultimately, the delay in processing licensure, it's not just an administrative inconvenience. It's a barrier for those families to access their medically necessary treatment for autism. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Samuel, will you be so kind and give us your testimony?
Sure. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
allowing me to testify today. My name is Scott Semmel. I'm the VP of Payer and Government Affairs for Acorn Health. I'd like to just echo my sentiments of Delegate Guyton and my colleagues, but also answer your question. I understand there may be limitations in the ability to shrink the time frame immediately, and we would be more than happy to entertain a discussion in terms of what that improvement plan would look like. Most of the states that we operate in, the timeline is from 14 to 30 days for that licensure to be completed and validated. So that would be ideal in addressing, the swift and immediate needs of these patients. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there questions for any of these witnesses? Delegate Kaiser, do you have a follow-up?
No, just to thank Mr. Semmel for answering my questions.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I had a list here, and I had Olston and Collison. She asked a question. How you like that? Next time, I'm going to take all the witnesses, and then they'll be like, we answer all the questions. Oh, Delegate Gazzoni. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
There were a lot of letters getting thrown around, so I wanted to check to make sure I was understanding all of them as kind of my first question. I'm going to have a follow-up. So BACB?
That's our board, the Board of Behavior Analysts. That's who licensed, that's our licensing board as board certified behavior analysts. So it's the Board of Applied Behavior Analysis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm also, my bigger question, because there was alphabet soup, but I mostly followed it. And I worked at NASA for years, so I'm not unused to alphabet soup. I think it was mentioned that right now this is a paper-based process, which seems to be a challenging thing here in the 21st century. Yes. So I'm curious about that and how much impact there may be based on that it's a paper-based product.
Right.
Process. So,
well, I think you're asking a great question. A lot of the boards, have been transitioning from paper-based to electronic-based, not wanting to create a fiscal note. We're trying to establish, within the processes that exist, if there's a way to expedite, or not, I don't want to create an expedited license, but if there's a way to approve and review in a more timely way, because from our communications with the board early on to get a better understanding of their licensure process, we were told that upon receipt of an application, it wouldn't be reviewed until the paper check was cashed, and then once that check was cashed, the review would begin. So that time lag between receiving the check, receiving the application, meanwhile, the applicant not knowing the status of that process and where things are, contributes to the delays. So if there's a way to kind of improve the flow of, the review of the application even, like, do you need to wait for the paper check to cash or to clear? And then on the back end, once, let's say, the application's been reviewed and approved, then the license won't be issued until the licensure fee is paid and that is cleared. So there's another, bank delay, if you will, on finalizing everything. So there's a lot of moving parts that aren't necessarily transparent. The applicant isn't aware. The third party that's trying to hire them isn't aware. So we're trying to bring some of that into the law, just having a timeline, something to work for, and then providing notification.
thank you for that information.
Sure.
And I beg your pardon, it's the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. It took me a moment.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I have Delegate Johnson, followed by Bandari.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and
You're
thank you,
welcome.
Delegate, for bringing this bill. I'm reading the Maryland Department of Health letter of information, and they say that a lot of the delays are due to folks not submitting all the information needed, and that would make the 10-day window very difficult. The board believes the extended this window to 30 days would be reasonable. But doesn't the bill address that on page 2, number 3, where it says if they don't submit all the information, the board shall issue the license within 30 days after receiving the additional information?
Absolutely, Delegate. Thank you so much for that question, and you are correct. This does not apply to applicants who have not completed the application. This applies to completed applications, and then you do have extra time if they don't.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
And is 10
Oh, I
days?
apologize.
Is 10 days reasonable if they have all the information they need?
Yeah, my understanding is yes, and I think other boards have a policy if there is a completed application and everything is in order, then they can get it all, wrapped up within a 10-day window.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we just recently passed House Bill 256 this morning on the floor. It was on third reader. And House Bill 256 dealt with this board. And initially, they wanted the sunset to be 5 years, but the committee discussed the matter because of all the issues. We only allowed it for 2 years. So it will be a little bit difficult, given all the issues that we know, that we learned in committee, for them to be able to do it in 10 days. But I do want to make you aware, and that being said, I'm not saying what will happen with the bill, but I thought you should know that House Bill 256 was voted on the floor. We all voted for it today. That actually does the extension only for 2 years because of the issues. We did not give them the 5 years. Okay? Any other questions? Thank you so much. And thank you all for your testimony. And Delegate, thank you for your work.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My pleasure. All right, so next we have, I think this is it for this bill. Andrea Mansfield. Oh, that's right, thank you. Andrea, we just want to leave you out, period. We have it against you today. I don't know what it is.
It's been one of those days. It's okay.
Tell us about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Andrea Mansfield. I'm here representing the licensed clinical professional counselors. And actually, the counselors fully support the intent of this bill, and they like the establishment of the timeframes as well as the improved communication. But they are concerned that the 10-day timeframe would be too short for the board to go through and review all of the information, just to ensure that there's sufficient sign-off by a supervisor, and that they can verify the details and ensure the compliance with all the procedures. The behavioral analyst is just one of many types of licenses that this board issues and oversees. There are professional counselors, alcohol and drug counselors, marriage and family therapists, professional art therapists, as well as the behavioral analyst. So they're trying to juggle and monitor, or kind of manage their time accordingly based on the volume coming in. So for that reason, just to give the board that flexibility, if they have more applications in one area than another, they would want them to have the ability to kind of balance that workload for them. So therefore, my client is supporting this bill with amendments to make it a 30-day time frame. They feel comfortable that the 30-day would provide sufficient time. I guess I would add, too, I know that there was a backlog of licenses. I think many of the professions that this board licensed were not happy about that. My understanding is that they have been really working hard to try to address that backlog, and they almost fully have. And I was also going to mention, Madam Chair, I know that the bill dealing with the sunset review that was amended to put the board in place for another 2 years to review some of the other issues, as they have some staffing issues and things in more recent years or so. With that, we support the bill with amendments to amend that time frame to 30 days versus the 10 days. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for your testimony. As you know, aware of the issues, which is why we didn't grant the 5 years. We did it for 2 years, so they have to come back. I like you, if you can meet with the sponsor when we're done
Yes.
and see what you guys can work out, okay?
Yep, thank you. Be happy
As
to.
well. Are there any questions? Hold on, any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. Well, this really concludes the bill hearing, okay, on House Bill 745.